Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Sports Business and Broadcast Zoom meeting. My name is Dave Leno. It has been an honor and privilege to host these meetings. We're going on closer to 3 months now of doing these free sessions, and really appreciate everybody's participation. We have a lot of day one Zoomers, as I like to say, that have been through this from the get-go, and I really appreciate your support. I love how we're all coming together during these trying times and learning from each other. Some themes to think about for today's meeting before I introduce our roundtable. Less is more in the economy of words. I remember a coordinating producer from a network telling me these two phrases. I think it's important not just for sideline reporting or hosting, but for those of you out there on play-by-play or aspire to get on television or even on radio if you're simply hosting a podcast, is how do you take a lengthy story or a segment and trim it down concisely to 2 or 3 sentences? Or how do you say a lot in a lesser amount of time? I think that's a very important skill to master early on when you're starting out or as you're strengthening your craft along your journey. And then one of the things that I constantly work on is what it's like to go live, and how do you bring that same energy, excitement, that voice inflection, as you hear me now, to a live hit on camera? How do you practice these elements, whether you're singing in the shower, practicing your report in front of the mirror or in your dresser? How do you communicate that same energy when you're going on and just talking into a camera and not reading from a teleprompter? A lot of you may think it's easy to do. It certainly is not, because you're probably thinking of 100 things, but you just got to concentrate on those 1 or 2 points you want to get out on the air. We'll also ask our roundtable today about interviewing, asking the right questions at the right times, and also interviewing people that are larger than life figures, people that we look up to, some athletes or coaches that we idolize, that we're coming in close contact with, and we have to get that polished 2 to 3 or 4-minute interview, take away our fandom, and execute a proper interview for the broadcast and your stakeholders. And then one of the things that I'm fascinated on, and our panel can shed some light on this, is the differences working for a team, being a team employee versus a TV network like an ESPN, Fox. What are some guidelines that our reporters have to abide by, or what are some things that they keep in mind along their broadcasting careers? So today we're going to have a broadcasters roundtable, and we're going to format the meeting today like so. I'll try to limit it to about a half hour, maybe 40 minutes. Maybe we'll go shorter, maybe a little longer. We'll see. But it will be a roundtable with myself, Marisa, Danny, and Renee. Then the meat of the call, which I really love and I think all of you appreciate, is a Q&A with yourselves and our participants. I kindly ask that don't raise your hand virtually on the Zoom until I ask for you to do so. I won't go in order necessarily based on people who have been here before that might want to ask a question that didn't get a chance to before. So don't be alarmed at that. I'll get to as many questions as our panel has time for. After that, we'll say goodbye to Marisa, Danny, and Renee, or they can stay on if they want. We'll review the roundtable on the back end of the call for those of you that are still on, and we'll talk about sports returning and some updates on what some of the leagues are talking about and how our jobs may be affected. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Sideline Reporters Roundtable. And these women are not just sideline reporters, they're hosts, they're in-game hosts. They do a variety of things in the broadcast field, so they can talk about all their experience today. We have Marisa Pilla, Danny Wexelman, and Renee Washington with us. All 3 of these women I know, and I've worked with them in some capacity or have met them along my broadcasting journey, and I'm happy to introduce them to you if you don't know them. Marisa, I work hand in hand at the Philadelphia Union, where she's great as a host and also a sideline reporter. She's also working with Fox Sports on their MLS coverage and has done a dynamite job at that. She's been great hosting drafts on the NWSL and been a reporter on their broadcasts. You can also see she's worked with the Big East Digital Network and also worked on games at Villanova and Penn, among many other opportunities. And it's great to have Marisa on with us today. Marisa, will say hello to you before I introduce Danny and Renee. How are you doing, Marisa?
Good, Dave. Thanks for including me in all of this. It's really exciting to be part of. And for those also who don't know, it's not on my slide. Dave and I went to high school together. So our journey into the broadcasting world has been really cool because often do you know the people you get to work with. And we actually knew each other from when we were teenagers. So it's been great to work with Dave all these years.
Thanks for saying that, Marisa. That Council Rock South representing here. Yeah, it's pretty cool that we're on the union set together and we go back to our high school days. I appreciate you mentioning that. Next, we have Danny Wexelman. Danny and I also work hand in hand at the New York Riptide of the National Lacrosse League, where Danny does a phenomenal job. Those broadcasts are on MSG Networks and also BR Live. She's also worked for MLB Network as a sideline reporter, done a variety of things for the network. Also as a reporter for Major League Rugby. I believe Danny was out, I think it was Vegas, maybe a couple months ago before this pandemic hit. And she also hosts a show on Sirius XM Channel 84 and also MLB Network. I can't forget her great podcast with Alexa Dat that she hosts as well. And she's a Mizzou grad. Danny, it's great to have you along. How are you and your family doing during these trying times?
Dave, you're making me blush reading all of these things. Thank you for putting this together and bringing us together to be able to share some experiences. I'm okay. My family's okay. I'm in New York City and we are all rallying together. So we're all good and I'm excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
No, you're welcome. And yeah, living in Manhattan must be a really tough time. We have some family and friends that are in New York and the surrounding suburbs, and it's like a lot of places. It's definitely a challenge living in the city. At least I would say the Big Apple right now. So it's great to have you with us, Danny. And finally, we have Renee Washington. And Renee, you and I met when you came to a Philadelphia Union game, and it was great to meet you and learn a little bit about your career path. Since your All-American soccer playing days at LaSalle University, where you also are an in-game host on their men's basketball shows with, I believe, our great PA announcer with the Union, Kevin Casey. So I know it's a thrill to do games at LaSalle for you. You also work on ESPN broadcasts on the Ivy League, and I'm sure other packages as well. Also working with Fox Sports covering the NBA's Washington Wizards and also the Washington Mystics. I also read, Renee, that you host a Fox Sports radio show as well, giving all your headlines in sports and pop culture, which I think is awesome, which you can shed some light on your versatility as well. And it's an honor to have you along with us too, Renee. I know you dabble in some other things as well, and acting as well. So Renee, welcome to our Zoom meeting.
Thank you so much, Dave, for that incredible welcome. And I'm honored to be here. You know, I'm excited to be able to join Danny, Marisa, and yourself as we talk through our career in sports. And it is nice to get, you know, with all that's going on in the world, an opportunity to get together and connect with people that we may not have connected with otherwise. So I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, Renee. Thanks. And I know that you've done some work with the AFL when they had a team, the Atlantic City Blackjacks, as well as what Danny and I are working with, the National Lacrosse League, where you were a host and correspondent. So it'd be cool to get your insight on that. So Marisa, Danny, Renee, some of the things we're going to talk about for our roundtable before we get to the Q&A. And these are a lot of these things are, I'm sure you saw, everybody was asking me questions to ask you upon registering for today's Zoom meeting. The prep process for sideline reporting and maybe how that differs from events that you guys have been a host. Maybe you've done play-by-play. Maybe you've done other forms of broadcasting that you can talk about how you prepare for your assignments before you get to the stadium or the arena. One of the things I'm always curious about is how you all find out injury information and how schools will allow you to share that information to the public on your broadcast, as when they will say, hey, we really can't make a statement on this time. That might happen during college basketball or college athletics broadcasts. So maybe you could talk about that a little bit. One of the big things that that I admire about all three of your works is about how you control the interview. How do you react quickly to when somebody makes maybe a glaring statement, whether positive or negative, whether it's a coach saying something and might not be reacting negatively towards you, but maybe about what's going on. I'm always fascinated to hear how you handle the walk-off interviews at halftime and post-game. And many people wrote to me about how you guys got to where you are, about how you got those opportunities. So when you're comfortable to share about how you got to where you are and how you go after opportunities, I think that the audience today would really love that. So first, to begin the roundtable, and that was a long introduction. I appreciate everybody's patience with that. Let's start with the preparation, Marisa, Danny, and Renee. We can, all three of you can chime on this, and one of you wants to start. But let's say you get an assignment. You can take it any way you want here. But how do you go about preparing? Let's say you get a college basketball, soccer, lacrosse assignment. How do you do your research before you get to the venue? Are you coming up with 3 or 4 stories that you want to talk about on air? Or are you saving a lot of that for things you find organically when you're on the call? And anybody can start.
Well, I think it all depends on what your role is for the game. If you're there, a host, I think that's when you start to cultivate your storylines. Start reading, as far back as you can go into how the season has been going, interesting things that keep popping up, consistencies, inconsistencies, things that you think are going to take shape in this game. But when you're a sideline reporter, I'm sure Danny and Renee can relate, is you're really there for what's happening right now. Like, you need to know the information of what has happened to put everything in perspective. But the whole reason you're there is to provide insight that other people can't get until after the year. So it really just depends on what your role is. And your prep really does look different from when you're hosting a pregame show to even when you're hosting, I'm sure Danny knows, a talk show. That preparation is so different. The length of your storylines and things you want to ask is going to change. On a pregame show, Dave, you and I know it's quick. We don't have that much time, and we have to get to the things we have to get to. Whereas in a talk show, you might have some more time, and then more conversations can build organically. So for me, it's all about understanding your role and trying to think, what is the message I'm trying to send across? What is my job right now? Is it to be quick and concise on the sidelines? Is it to give people insight of what to watch for prior to tip-off or prior to kick? Or is it for us to talk about storylines happening from around the sport?
Those are great points. And I think to echo what Marisa is saying, stops. So when you have an assignment, you may be focusing versus prepping for every content you create has a different process. But at the end of the day, if you're working with a league, and for all of us, we've worked with leagues, teams, networks, when you're working with one of those companies, you have to make sure you're always knowledgeable about what you're doing. So for me, if it's a team, always making sure that I'm keeping up with all that's going on with the team. So it's not that you have to cram last minute, an hour before you're going on to the game, or an hour before you're going on the show. You should have already been putting in that work continuously from, honestly, the moment you get hired. So the prep work essentially never stops. It's just a matter of now, as Marisa's saying, tailoring your message to what type of content you're creating. So if you're on the sideline, you are the ears and eyes for viewers. You're trying to provide something that they can't see, they can't hear, they can't feel. And then now you have those stories you know about that you can calls for. But essentially the preparation work is continuous and also directly aligns with the relationships that you're building. So I know you talked about, Dave, getting that inside information on injury updates and things like that. You're constantly building those relationships, not just with players and coaches, but with the entire staff and personnel, I honestly get to know everybody from the security to the custodians to the team families, spouses, kids, everybody, because you just never know what storylines are out there that you would be limiting yourself to if you're just focused on the players and the coaches. So it's a balance of constantly making sure that you're out, having those conversations, building the rapport so they trust to come to you. And then that way you can tailor your message for the content you're putting out.
That's really good stuff. I think maybe I'll go a little more specific in what I do. And I know that Marisa and Renee do this as well. So for if I know I have a game on Saturday, let's say I'm going to be the sideline reporter. For me, I like to over prep. And I think that's a commonality between anyone who works in sports, is to be over prepared and knowing the name of a very random person that may come up in the broadcast because you don't want to get caught off guard. That's the worst feeling. So for me, if I know my game's on Saturday, I'm coming up with 6 storylines that pertain to the teams. Even if the storyline isn't the strongest one, I'm going to take 6 probably, because throughout the week, those are going to get cut down as things start to happen. And when you get to the game, you're probably only left with 2 real storylines. And as Marisa noted, when you're a sideline reporter, you are reporting on what's happening, but sometimes you also want to know, hey, maybe there's 2 brothers who are playing each other. Maybe there's a goal that's going to be some guy's 1,000th. There's a milestone that you're celebrating. So there are some storylines to focus on there. And then throughout the week, for prep, for me, it's important to talk to people. I want to talk to as many players and coaches and people as I can. They're going to be able to give me what I'm saying, and I can go get to the game. And I know I've talked to 3 players, 1 from the opposing team and 2 from my team, and then a coach beforehand. And then something happens throughout the game they mentioned to me, I get to talk about that. And no one else has that information but me. That's my job, to bring you the thing you find on the internet. That's my number 1 question to people when I do prep. What's something about you that I cannot find on the internet? Because I want to be able to have that nugget, able to relay it however I can throughout the broadcast. Maybe that's in an interview. Maybe that's just me talking in front of the camera. Maybe that's part of my post player to your coach about your 1,000th goal being scored. Those are the things that just add, it's just a little bit. And you at home might not know that I did a lot of work to get that little nugget, but it made you like what I did probably even more because I had that little bit of information. And on the flip side, if you're doing a radio show, that is completely different. That prep is hours upon hours throughout the week of knowing every detail of your subjects. I do a lot of baseball, who these kids are, where they've played, who they know, what I can find on them on the internet. And I mean, it's probably like 15 pages of notes for 6 guests. Just to be ready to go. And if it's a live radio show, I mean, it's off the cuff, but it's a lot of work behind the scenes to cover yourself. And I think you never want your intelligence questioned, and that happens to women more times than I can count. And so I cover myself, and I never want to see what she's talking about. So for me, my prep, I pride myself on and think that I get great answers because I asked great questions.
I think that's a great point, Danny. And, prep to me is fun. Like I studied journalism because I enjoyed the research of it all. I enjoyed digging for stories and finding something interesting and being able to then flip that and make it broadcast ready is interesting to me. And I think that's why we really do enjoy the prep, because another resource that Danny kind of alluded to too is PR staffs. That's their job, to put out these PR messages. And every time before I go to a sign gig, like how Danny said, like sometimes you want those human interest piece, because especially I can't even imagine in baseball, there's time that needs to be filled sometimes, and you need to have those stories that can be a little longer than 30 seconds or 45 seconds if you have I always ask PR staff too, is there anything going on with the team, with a certain player that people might not know is going on? You know, I learned about players battle with cancer through a question like that. I learned about things happening that the team is doing within the community, and it just so happened that that game, the community group was there. So just in case I need that information, I always tell my producer, hey, this group is going to be here. They're sitting in this section. They're wearing these shirts. In case you need to go to it, you have B-roll. Because you also want to make everybody else's job a little bit easier if you can, because working in live sports, working at a live event, there are so many moving parts. And if you can't pull your own weight, sometimes it's a little bit more trouble than it's worth, especially sidelines. It's one of the first things that gets cut budgetary wise. So make yourself invaluable. Try to always think outside the box and what's the next step? What's further I can take to make somebody else's job a little easier that doesn't really ruin my life, but that way all of our bases are covered. And I think kind of thinking nation out really quickly if you need to, or also being able to expand on it if you need to as well.
When you three are in the moment and you're interviewing a player or coach, and let's talk about the moments that maybe it's a tough situation for you personally. So the coach is ticked off, he's coming off with a halftime interview, or it's a player, and you have to get the job done. How do you control yourself to where you're the one in charge, not the coach that's about to go off, and not necessarily like I opened up the meeting today. He's really not, he or she may not be going off at you, but indirectly it comes across like they are. But how do you handle that in the moment? That's the first part. And second part, if I could dovetail that with the types of questions you want to ask. Do you have two or three in your mind, or are you listening to what he or she is saying to tag it with a proper follow-up? So whoever wants to take that first, that instance, that tough circumstance.
I think listening is always the number one thing when you're asking questions. You can have 3 or 4 questions floating in your brain. Sometimes I like to write them down because that's just the way I work. Like if I put it on paper, I won't forget it. But make sure your first question is, especially at halftime, this has happened to me. Coach is down to 9 players. They're down 3 goals. I have to interview him. He doesn't want to talk to me. I know that. He knows that. The world knows that he doesn't want to talk to me right now, but he has to. And you kind of have to go into that situation of knowing that they know that this is your job. You understand this is their job. They might be annoyed. They might be pissed off, but it's not towards you. And you kind of just have to go in there ready to take the brunt of, a biting remark, but no, it's not directed towards you. Ask your first question as cleanly and concisely as you can. Make it, don't try to put a situation, like I said, like if they're down players, if they're down by a lot of goals or points, make it as point blank as you can about the situation. Don't try to add emotion to it, or don't try to tell them how they're feeling in a question. Like, oh, you must feel this, or it's been such a tough first half. That way you're implying that you think it's been a tough first half. It's not about you, it's about the answer. And I think especially in those tough situations, listening for that follow-up, that answer is going to give you either a really good follow-up, or you're going to be able to say thank you and walk away and get out of there with just one question. And more likely than not, I would think your producer would understand if they kind of sense the tension in it. But always listen for that follow-up, because they might have said something really interesting or something, like, oh, we're missing some plays that we worked on. Okay, ask them, well, what are those plays? What are you missing? And make them give you more details, because they want to get out of there. So just make them give you as many details as you can, and a follow-up
so that's
is a great
honestly
way.
where a lot of that preparation and the relationship building does come into play, because there are times in the course of a game where you have to do your job. You have to ask some questions. You have to ask that coach a question when they had a tough first half, or they're down, or like Marisa's alluding to. to get your job done. So by you building those relationships and having conversations prior to the game, and not always and really focusing on getting those storylines, those two things allow you that now when you have those moments where it's like, I have to ask, I have to talk to you, it makes it a little bit easier because the coach has built that rapport with you that they now respect you, they understand you're doing your job, and you want to be more than just, you know, there are millions of reporters asking them questions, be the person they are comfortable with, even when they're down, even when they have players that are injured. But the biggest thing is, like Marisa said, listening, because I think a lot of times people in general, this is not even just sideline reporting, but in interviews will be so stuck on asking their questions. You're not listening to what the person's saying. And you could honestly insult or come across very, like that could show in your question if they're saying something that's very good, but they didn't dive deep enough into it. Instead of asking a question to get more out of them, you now ask some other question that you wrote down 3 hours ago. It might not fit in the circumstances. So it's preparing, having the storyline so that now, like as Danny said before, you have those 6 storylines, however many storylines. So now when you go into it, you have things to pull from for that strong first question. And then your follow-up question, for me, I try to tailor it based on what they say in the first question. So I don't even always have scripted questions of first, second, third. I make the first one strong, and then from there, okay, maybe if their first answer is very good, they've answered what I want to get. Now, what are those other 2 or 1 or 2 questions I can pull from to ask to follow up? But you really have to pay attention to the game. Also, I think a lot of people feel like sideline reporters, it's just someone in your ear telling you what to say and you just step on the camera and you're a puppet. No, you're watching the game. You're watching. Honestly, I have so many notes. I'm a big notes taker. So many notes. I'm watching both benches. I'm watching the game. I'm watching I'm running around trying to figure out what's being said in timeouts and what's being said in the huddles and everything. I'm listening to what players are saying to each other. You know, you have to get all those little emotions and responses and more than just what the score is, because now it allows you to tailor your question accordingly. So you're running around. Like I have mastered running in heels with bags and notebooks and things and microphones because you're constantly juggling so many different things at once. So now when you have that interview, fans hear 1 or 2 questions, but you've been working for those 1 or 2 questions the entire game and leading up to the game, honestly, to make it easier to now, okay, coach, and talk to them, or player, and you're talking to them. So it is about listening, paying attention. You're not shutting off. Like I'm posting things on social media. I'm going to the huddles. I'm watching what people are saying. I'm reading what's being said on, you know, what their team is tweeting, because sometimes the team's social media manager may have something I missed. So you're just constantly monitoring so many different things to now tailor your question accordingly. So you have to be willing to pay attention, and you're juggling a lot. You're thinking a lot of different things, and it's okay, what makes most sense for this game, for this moment, for this interview?
Yeah. So, okay, a few things. One, Dave, you asked about like interactions with difficult interactions. So I actually just had one when I was in Vegas with Major League Rugby, and my producer did not realize that the head coach was standing nearby, and he was kind of talking about him, and he said someone else was the head coach, and then the head coach got very angry, walked off. And he said he would not do the interview with me. And this was opening weekend for us. Everything was tough. I was standing there, so I gave the situation a little time to breathe, and then I went and found that coach and apologized, and I just try to spin it in from my perspective. We want to hear from you. Like I want to be able to present your ideas, and I want to be able to showcase what you're thinking, or like, this is a big stage for us. Like, I hope that we can find a way for us to have a few minutes together, excuse me. And the situation diffused. It doesn't always diffuse. And guess what? Sometimes they're not going to talk to you. And guess what? It has nothing to do with you. And if you don't learn to not take things personally in this industry, then you're going to be cooked, because there is so much that happens in a day that has nothing to do with you, but it's going to affect you, and it's your attitude. So again, Dave, to your point, what do? You have a good attitude. You put on a smile. Even if you understand what's going on, you have a job to do. So you act professionally. And then if you want to go talk to your friends later and vent about what happened and let it out because it was a weird situation, then go do it. But in the moment, every eye is on you. As a woman, I cannot tell you how many times someone has come up to me after a game and said, I saw you down there. You didn't look happy. Are you okay? Or I saw you making this face, or I saw this about you. That no context. They don't know who's talking to me. I have a very weird face when my producer is talking to me and I'm trying to watch the game. Please don't look at my face. It has nothing to do with what's going on. I'm trying to focus, and I'll toot Dave and I's horn for a quick second. In lacrosse indoor, they're pumping music loudly through the whole game. The whole game, there's music in the stadium, and there's a broadcast in my ear that I am trying to watch the game, tune out the music, and do my job. So yeah, my face is gonna look weird. So to the point, act professionally and follow up with someone if there's a situation, and do the best you can. If they say no, they say no. That's not on you. You did your job. The words that matter the most in this situation. I am also a word nerd. I like to use active verbs as much as I can. And as nerdy as it is, who, what, where, when, why, that is your best follow-up second question. Why did that happen? Who are you referring to? What is your reaction to that you're speaking of? Like, that's easy. And although it doesn't take a lot of thought, that's what the viewer wants to know too. So my first question, I get, I don't know, maybe 7 minutes of airtime in a broadcast.
Lucky.
10, probably. Yeah, if you're lucky. Something. And I know the pressure. It's on myself. No one else is putting it on me, but I put pressure on myself to ask a good question, a smart question that people want to hear, that I want to know, that I think pertains to the storylines. There's a lot that goes into it, as these two women mentioned. You want to get it right, and we're working really hard to get it right. So the first question, it depends on the situation and the storylines and what comes natural. Maybe it's something that comes out of left field. If you ask it with conviction and authority, then ask your question. If you fumble and you're unsure of if you should be asking it, don't ask something with authority, and maybe it's not your best question in that moment. You get a chance to follow up, and maybe if you're lucky, you get one more follow up too, for a chance to paint the picture for people. And I will add that I'm still working on the listening part very hard. It is a skill that takes a long time to be able to actively listen to what someone is saying to you on live television, while you know there are other ideas floating in your head, while you have a producer talking to you while you are talking. I can't even begin to what that experience is like. You want to nail it. So sometimes you don't nail it. You cannot beat yourself up. You cannot be mad at yourself. Guess what? You'll get another chance to redeem yourself, and you'll learn from it. So if you don't nail the question, don't beat yourself up. Everyone is learning. We are all still learning. There's no one in the business who will tell you that they don't learn something new every day. And if they're not learning, they're probably not having fun anymore.
Yeah, actually, to add to, I'm sorry, Dave.
Oh, go.
To add to what Danny was saying, you do have to have a thick skin in this industry with whatever job you have. There are going to be social media trolls. There are going to be people that say things, but there are going to be times where you fumble the question. You have this great question in your head, and then you deliver it in a way that you did not anticipate and want to deliver it. So you have to have thick skin. You have to be willing to, be ready for whatever is thrown your way. You have to be prepared for the unexpected, because there have been times where you are planning something and it just completely goes left. But for me, I think one of the biggest things that I always also try to tell people is, as a reporter, you have to keep in mind the human side. So I played sports at a high level. I'm a fan of sports, and I'm a reporter of sports. So I try to always keep in mind, for any question I'm asking, if the tables were turned and someone was asking me that question, how would I respond to it? Would I be feel disrespected? Would I think would I like the question? Would I think it's a question I can answer thoroughly? And as a fan, what type of questions and what type of answers would I be looking for? If I'm watching this game, what is it that's going through my head from a fan perspective? Of course, you always tailor everything professionally, but you have to also look through the lens of people. How is the person going to respond? How, what are people going to think of this question? Is it something that is like a no-brainer where everybody can already see what happened and you're just asking something you already know? Or are you able to dig deeper in terms of the question you're asking? So keep in mind perspective, because you're human. So it's, you shouldn't be asking these overly complicated questions and trying to stump people. You're just trying to deliver what people want to see, feel, hear that maybe they're not getting.
To that point, Renee, is I know maybe a young broadcasters fall into this, is like you're trying to prove so much in your one question. Like you want to prove that you know what you're talking about, and a lot do that by asking these very long-winded questions that keep going. There's commas after commas, and the person's checked out. Imagine if you just played a full game, you played the majority of minutes, you are tired, somebody pulls you, you have sweat dripping down your face, and somebody's going on and on and on and on, and you haven't heard the question yet. They're going to give you a terrible answer. And that's just because, like Renee said, you got to put yourself in their perspective. Like, if they just won a really important game, be there with the excitement. But you also have to know too, like in this field, I'm sure you all know, like you're gonna have to ask tough questions, but there's a respectful way to like autism. No, that's not a way to create a good reputation for yourself. You want to create good working relationships with people, and they'll eventually learn that, like, hey, she's going to ask good questions. And if she has to ask a tough question or a question about a situation or a game that really didn't go well, she's going to ask it in a respectful way, because there's always a way to do that. You don't have to make the coach the villain or make the player the villain. We're all people here, and we're all just trying to work in this crazy industry of sports that's and tiring and exhausting. So let's all just enjoy it, because that's what it's supposed to be about. So remember that, at the core of everything, everybody else has feelings. Everybody wants to be portrayed in a good way. Ask people questions, the tough questions, with respect and clarity, and know what you're talking about when you ask them.
Marisa's point, real quick, Dave. So structure, everyone asks questions differently. Everyone has a method. My method, if you would like it or not, whatever, my method, I try really hard. It doesn't work every time, but I try to make a point. I try to make an observation, and then I ask my question. That's it. That's probably 2 sentences max. Some sentences, I want to tell them what I'm thinking and why I'm about to ask what I'm going to ask, to give them context. They can't read your mind. Point something out to them. Refer to something from the week. You told me earlier in the week. That's one of my favorite go-tos. And you refer to something back that they said, and that's for me, that structure works, and I like that structure a lot, and it makes me feel like I'm not rambling on and on, because sometimes you black out. When you are broadcasting, you have no idea what is coming out of your mouth. And I say that, and I probably shouldn't, but it's true. And there's so many things going on, and someone will come back to you and say, do you know that you just said that? And I was like, no, I didn't. And I watch it back, and I was like, oh, okay, I did say that. And I meant to say it, or sometimes a word comes out of your mouth or it comes out wrong. It's not because we don't know how to say it. It's because our brain is going so fast. There's so much happening. That our mouth just says something and we weren't prepared for. But find a way that you like to structure, and then repeat that and learn it and practice it. And maybe that's a way to be more concise and efficient and not ramble all the time.
Speaking of going back and looking at your work, I think that was a big one for a lot of people on the Zoom today. And that is, when you guys are looking back at your demo reels and putting them together, how are you structuring that content? How are you choosing what's your best work? That leads into, what are some of the common traits that you find in the women or men that you look up to in the reporting business or hosting side of the business? What do you find is the pieces of material on your broadcast that you're putting it instantly on your demo reels to send to teams, networks, or other employers? What stands out the most?
Goodness, your reel, I think, might be one of the things that gives me so much anxiety. Like, I have to go through all this footage that I've done over the year, over the last, of course you keep it as recent as possible, but even in the course of a game, in the course of a show, in the course of, you're saying so many things. So it's so hard to pick a few things. But for me, I always tell people, one of the things I look for are those clips, those questions, those moments where when I'm on camera, it's your reel. So it should be you, it shouldn't be like, we should hear you speaking. We should hear only you speaking for the majority of it. We should see you as much as possible. So I look for those moments where I remember watching and smiling. And one of my mentors once told me, like, if you're not smiling at your own work, if you're not excited or like feeling some sort of emotion from your own work, no one else is going to feel that either, right? So you want to make sure that in those moments, that question you deliver, or when you make that really good point, it's something that you're like, oh, that was good, and those are the moments that are going to also translate and show your work in a positive light. And for me, because I work in so many different areas, I try to make sure I have variety. So it's not all clips that look exactly the same, me with a microphone on the sideline. I try to make sure that you have sideline reporting. I'm anchoring and hosting a show. You're getting all different types of content and different types of sports. So because I cover multiple sports, it's not all basketball, it's not all football. You're getting a variety of sports as well. So you want to make sure that in however long your reel is, and I know people have different thoughts on the length it should be. For me, it's always just my questions or my point. I'm not showing what the person is saying. No offense to them. It could be Michael Jordan that I'm interviewing. We don't want to know what they're saying. You just want to know how I deliver the point. And then making sure that you are, delivering it in a way that's powerful to show your strength as a reporter. So you're asking a great question. I try to get the points that are deeper. The questions, the statements. I get some questions and analysis, also variety in what I'm saying, so that it's not all the same types of content. So that's my nugget. But reels give me anxiety because
I think there's a lot of different philosophies out there about reels. Somebody once told me, like, the first minute of your reel should be all quick montages, but then other people told me other things. I think you need to experiment around with it a little bit, find out what you're most comfortable in the way you want to display. At the end of the day, it's your stuff, it's your reporting, it's your hosting, it's whatever, but it's you. So you want to feel comfortable that you got your message across. I personally answer questions in my thing, only a little bit though. I ask a question, coach, why were you so effective in the final third? And if they have a good answer, like, well, our number 9 was really effective in finding space. Get a little bit of the answer. And then that way, when you ask them to show you follow-up, you have context of why you asked the question you asked previously. And like Renee said, we're all doing a bunch of different things. No one is just doing one job. So it's important to show all the different things you can do, because that makes you more hireable. And it makes you more desirable to show that, oh, she can report, she can host. If I needed to, she could be in the studio. If I needed to, she could do a talk show. She can do a bunch of stuff. And that really sets you above and beyond, because I'm sure all of us have tons of different skills. That's how you have to operate in this industry. You have to be able to do more than one thing. Show that off in your reel. And make sure you, at the end, you put a slate with your phone number, your email address, where people can contact you, because you never know how this thing is going to be passed around. I've had it where I've emailed it to someone and they've sent it around. So those people don't have my email. They need to be able to have that information. I think it's stressful too to put a reel together, because sometimes you look at something and you're like, wow, this game was awesome. And you look at it and you're like, oh my God, it was terrible. Why did I think this was good? Or you can really beat yourself up, or whatever it is. Just always remember, like, it's never as bad as you think. It's never as great as you think. It's always somewhere in the middle. Stay positive with it all. And I try to update my reel, every couple months when I'm in season, because I know when I'm in season, I'm doing multiple games a week. I'm getting a ton of content don't leave it all to the end of the season. Try to pick and choose your little pieces so you can kind of do small batches, and then keep a running list of people that you've made connections with, that have responded to your emails in the past, because that's a big one. You can send a ton of emails and get no responses. And keep a running list. So every time you get a new reel out, you know exactly who to send it to. Check in with them. Hey, hope you're doing well. Just a quick update on me. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Here's see this, and somebody in the hiring department really wants to see more of this, and it helps you grow and understand more of what exactly should I be putting in this that's going to help me get that next job.
Oh boy, demos. Yeah, I mean, I've been putting one together since I was in college, and it's a nightmare for me. A few things. One, as you can hear, everyone puts their demo together in a different way, and everybody caters it to themselves. There's not a right way. I do think there could be some wrong practices, but there's not one right way. So take a feel, edit it. I edit my own, cause I'm over here solo, but, you know, I look at a couple things. I think number 2, I have 3 or 4 people that I will send my new demos to and have them check it out. And those are the only people. Everyone is going to have an opinion. Everyone is happy to share it. I don't need everyone's opinion. I need the people that I trust, who have helped me get to where I want to go, who know me the best, who know my strengths. Gonna the truth. I need the people who are going to flat out say that clip is not good. You do not look good in that clip. You did not sound good in that clip, even though I may love it because I did something wild and crazy, and it's different and it stands out. Sometimes you're clouded because you want to stand out and be different in your demo. So those are 2 things. And as far as what I put, I will add, I wasn't always doing all these different sports. I was only doing baseball for a while. And that was really difficult because I did feel like I was losing opportunities. So I would say if you're only in one sport, you should take advantage of what you are doing at that game, at that practice, at a press conference, and try to get as many different shots and varieties of stand-ups. And are you saying something serious? Are you saying funny? Are you being clever? Are you standing in front of a group of people who are talking? Change your background. So if you're only doing one sport, it's not the end of the world. You can still get jobs in other sports. I have no idea how I did that still, but I did, and I'm here. I'm proof. My demo was straight baseball, and I got a job covering Major League Rugby and the National Lacrosse League. And I got a job with SiriusXM without having any radio experience because my demo is diverse and has a lot of different things in it, even though it was one sport. And I pushed and I advocated for myself, and I got lucky at the end of the day that there were groups of people who knew that I worked really hard and I know sports and I do my homework, and that they weren't afraid to put me in front of the camera. That happens too. That happens. And I am proof of that. It is great to have diversity. You want to show different sports. If you want to continue this path, you want to be able to show yourself off in different ways. And lacrosse allows me to do that in ways that baseball doesn't. And the same for baseball and rugby and all these other things. They allow you to show yourself off in new ways. And then when you go to decide what you want in your demo, as Renee was saying, if you don't smile, if it doesn't enlighten you, if it doesn't make you feel proud, then take it out. Mine is always ranging under 5 minutes, from like 3 to 4 usually. If I can get it to 3 and I think it's banging, then that's amazing, because honestly, from what I have heard personally, you get about 30 seconds maybe, and then they're going to turn it off. That's real. If they keep watching, that's great. You never know though. And also the other thing too, you have to remember when you're applying for jobs is it doesn't, just because your demo is amazing and you fit that job perfectly, it does not mean you are going to get that job. And it has nothing to do, again, with you. This industry might already have someone chosen. They might pick someone internally and they have to externally interview people. There are so many other factors, and you should be proud of your demo and be proud of the work that you've done, and don't let not getting a job diminish that, and don't think that your demo isn't good enough. I bet your demo is good enough. It was just not the right fit in the moment. I got this job with the Riptide by chance, by timing. It wasn't fitting for somebody else at the time, and they needed someone. And I raised my hand, and I was very transparent and said, as you can see on my demo, I have baseball and rugby, and that's it. And that was okay for them, and they took a chance on me, and I'm really grateful for that. But again, goes to show, if you take the time to diversify what's in your demo and be proud of that, then I think it can go a long way for you.
I think that all three of you make some great points there with the versatility. I've been a big advocate for those that have gotten to know me over the course of hosting these Zooms. And for those that know me personally, I'm really big on doing different sports. It can get you more applicable to the job market. It could also sharpen your game calling. The fact that you're working more. I see that I'm going in and out with the internet, so I apologize again. But what I was saying was being versatile helps your job application status, being applicable to more teams and networks, and also just sharpening your game calling, just being more well-versed when you're on the air. I do want to stress that I believe that it's a less is more mentality. Like I opened up this meeting, and all three of you hit on this, I think is a great practice. And that's my personal opinion, but I think all three of you also mentioned that as well. If an employer really likes you and wants to take a chance, they will follow up with you. They will ask you, what's your experience in that sport? They will ask you, can I see a full game demo from you? Can I see more elaborate hits with you? Can I see more interviews? Can I see more of you hosting? I think they'll come to you. So, if you can keep it to 2-3 minutes, I think that's great. Quite candidly, it's something I struggle with, as I'm sure the three of our guests on the roundtable do as well, is picking that best material to put out to employers. I wanted to share the Sideline reporting poll with everybody. I asked, what do you think is the most challenging part of TV sideline reporting? I had 26 people that voted, and thank you very much. And 11, a resounding 42%, said the hardest part is the halftime walk-off interview. Congratulations to those that got that. You will win a nice prize. I found this interesting. The second was the live hit coming back from break. I have some experience doing that as well with Big Ten Network, obviously with hosting. But speaking of sideline reporting, I know that can be a challenge too. Third was the injury update over gameplay, 6 people, and 2 people voted on the post game. Hopefully you can see those results there on the screen. Marisa, Renee, Danny, how do we go about finding these opportunities when we make a killer demo? Is it all who you know? Not so much what you know, but how do you get yourself out there? Let's say for most of the people on here, we don't have agents. So how do we go about finding these opportunities? Is it job boards? Is it talking to other broadcasters and other executives in the business that may be able to connect the dots for you? So if you want to shed some light on maybe how you got to your current jobs or how you go after others, take it wherever you'd like to go.
I'll start. I don't have an agent. I've never had an agent. And, I've gotten to a nice point in my career so far. I started off as a production assistant. I knew I wanted to be on air, so I annoyed enough people until they let me go on air, and I just kept chugging away. I think the most important part of potentially getting jobs is making connections, but making them genuine connections. You don't want people to feel like you're only bothering them because you need a job. Really be genuinely interested in meeting these people, in reaching out to these people, offering, hey, can we just meet up for a cup of coffee when, life gets back to normal? Can we I'm going to be in town. You're not. Just make yourself in town. I'm going to be, in the city. Do you mind if we meet for lunch real quick? I'd love to pick your brain. get to know people that you admire. If there's a show that you really love to watch, I love watching Good Morning Football. I think it's one of the best shows on TV right now. If you love a show, look up who the producer is, look who the director is, anyone involved with the show. Try to get in touch with them and say, hey, you know, I love what you guys do. I love X, Y, and Z about what you do. And I'd love to, you know, meet up and maybe pick your brain a bit. More often than not, people want to help each other out in this industry. At least that's what I found. I've had so many people be so kind to me, especially when I was right out of college, and letting me talk to them and letting me ask questions and learning from them. And even now, you know, I get to work with Katie Witham on MLS on Fox, and she is incredible. She's one of the nicest people and so helpful. So, you know, just, I would say, reach out to people, make it a genuine connection of what really genuinely wanting to get to know about them, about what they do, about how they got there. Tell them a little bit about yourself, make sure they know what you're interested in. And keep those relationships going. Job boards are a great place to go to see kind of where things are moving. But as Danny said, you never really know why they're posting those jobs. You know, like out of graduation, I kept a spreadsheet. I applied to 200 jobs. I did not hear back from one of them. I almost got a job in Fargo, but I did not get it. And I was heartbroken. And that was the only place that ever got back to me. So know that if a job's listed, doesn't necessarily mean it's technically open. Legally, they have to post jobs, but that's not to deter you. I think it's just to kind of keep your expectations with job boards. I think also just following people and understanding where things are moving. If you see that a reporter has just, you know, that someone that you follow has just left and they announced a big new opportunity for themselves, get in contact. Hey, I saw that someone's moving on. Do you have a need for this? Do you have a need for that? Reach out to people at a team level. Hey, I'm interested in being involved with X, Y, and Z. I always try to reach out to teams not in season. I really hard to kind of get the answers you want for people in season. So understand the sports cycle of when teams start to go back, and that's kind of your sweet spot of when you want to reach out. You know, if you want to get in on college football, I start reaching out maybe beginning of August. So people, you know, people are in the office, but they're not too busy to answer you. Understand that if you want to get into the NBA, it's probably September you got to start talking to people. If you want to get into MLS, it's January. Understand those cycles too of like, you email a baseball team in the middle of July, odds are to respond to you, and probably that position has been filled unless there's a vacancy noted. But I think creating those kind of looking forward, we'll come back around maybe a year and a half later. Hey, I need 2 fill-in games. Are you available? So I got 2 games work. You know, it's not a full-time thing, but it came back to me. And then, you know, it's great too when people start to ask me for advice and I'm able to give them jobs that I can't take. And it kind of just all goes back together. And I think that's, you know, if you help somebody else out, you'll get helped out and kind of help all kind of navigate through all this craziness.
Yeah, those
sometimes.
are some great points. I think the biggest things for me have to be in networking and social media. And I'll talk about the networking component first. I have had so many people on, so I'm now in a position apparently where I seem like I can give people jobs. I have no idea why. So I now have people be like, hi, my name is Bob. I see you work at ESPN. I want to one day work at ESPN. Can I have a job? And I'm like, sure, when I get one. Like, I don't know where we are getting this miscommunication that I seem like someone that's handing out jobs, but please, that's not me. So, you know, the networking piece is building a relationship with people, not reaching out with a handout, like, what can you do for me? But genuinely get to know the person. So you can lazily network through social media if you wanted to. You don't even have to go anymore and be on site to meet people. You can reach out to people through social media the right way. You can, of course, for me, all of my job opportunities actually have come through networking. So my first TV job, I always tell people a story. I was working in local news, doing news and sports, high school sports. I was out at an event on a panel similar to this, and I was just talking with the other host, and we were just having conversation, not even looking for a job, just having conversation. And they told me they were working with a TV station They were, you know, they just got a new studio. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. I always love to see what other people are doing in their production, because everybody does something a little differently. So it's always good to have that balance of perspective. So I was like, you know what, I'd love to see your new studio. You know, is there an opportunity that maybe I can come out and just check it out? Go to check out the studio. I'm walking through, we're having conversation, I'm getting introduced to people. Come to find out, their lead anchor had just put in her 2 weeks that day that I was there. Just complete right timing, just incredibly lucky in that sense, where I happened to be in office as they were talking about you know, someone had just put in their 2 weeks. So I was meeting with people and they were like, you know what, actually you'd be that day. Like, I logged it down that day. So, you know, so a lot of it really does come from networking. My job with the National Lacrosse League as a producer and an on-air talent, through networking, I was able to get into that role. My job now in ESPN, working with Fox Sports, those came through networking. So it might, you know, having a killer reel, having a you know, incredible background, of course you have to be able to perform once you get that position, but the networking will help kind of push you in the door. So make sure you're genuinely building relationships with people. Keep in touch. Don't always reach out just for feedback, just for questions, just for a handout. Reach out to check in, especially now. How are things going? Everyone's world is changed and affected in some way. Check them out if they want to go grab coffee, or I don't even drink coffee, but I'll still ask people, would you like to go grab coffee? You know, like, get to know people, and then use social media to market yourself. Because Indeed, TV Jobs, all these different websites, LinkedIn, are great. Do not get me wrong. They're tremendous assets. But for me, it's more beneficial that you're marketing yourself, because you're now putting your work out there. You know, when I have packages that I do that I really enjoy, or just in general, I'm always pushing out my content on social media so that people can constantly see what I'm doing. You know, so now I have a reel, yes, but I also have I keep a playlist. All my videos and messages that I like, I make sure to save them, keep them, put them in like a log spot. So now I can just occasionally pump them out, post them, whatever it may be. Or, you know, you just do a great interview with someone, post it, share a snippet of it so people want to see more. So it's very important to build relationships, and it's also very important that you're marketing yourself. I don't have an agent either. I am my own agent. Like, I am out there constantly advocating for myself and selling myself. So make sure it's not enough to just be on Indeed. It's not enough to be on LinkedIn, because as we're all saying, a lot of those jobs may have already been filled and essentially are just to cover protocol. But you want to make sure that if there's a job opening, that you're the first person people, you know, down the line, and you might build that relationship a year ahead of that job even opening. And because you've cultivated it properly, a year later, now that opens up and you're I'm Renee, my mentor. Oh, we good, you get a job. It has to be persistent. It has to be a marathon, not just a quick sprint of who can help me get this.
Okay, so thing. I'll just add, because that's also good, and it's right. It's all spot on. You guys. And so if you ask somebody, as Marisa said, to pick their brain, go into that meeting and do your homework on them and ask them questions, and they will talk to you, and they will be so, it's not a shallow trick. I genuinely care, but I do know that people like to talk about themselves and what they do. It is just a known fact. And so if you take advantage of that and do it in a genuine way, they're going to remember you instead of you babbling on about what you do, which that's the wrong way to go about it. You should not be so invested and interested in what you have to say. You should be more interested in what they're going to tell you. And that's going to cultivate, again, as Marisa said, throughout the years. And if you want to be in this industry, it is not an instant coffee and then you actually welcome it. You welcome knowing that, you don't welcome it, but you are more used to it. And for me, I am like way more accepting of that and understanding that it's not me. It's not me. It is situational most of the time. Maybe because my hair is what it is. Maybe they didn't choose me. That's a thing that happens. But there's a lot of rejection, and the sooner you kind of understand where that rejection is coming from instead of feeling like it's all you, I think the quicker you can rise up in the industry and find those opportunities. And I also personally welcome challenges and try to understand, accept failures as actually successes, because you're going to learn from it, you're going to get better from it, and instead of beating yourself up again, you're able to take it and turn it into something positive. So I honestly very much welcome challenges and welcome uncomfortable situations. That's where you grow the most. And also be a good person when you're reaching out to these people. Everyone will talk. Everyone knows if you are a good person or not. Everyone knows if you have an attitude in this industry. Everybody talks. So if you have done something to somebody, or you have come off, or you have said something, it will follow you. Be a good person. That will get you a job. I promise you. They will choose you over someone who is more qualified because you are better to work with, because you are a good person, because you are energetic, whatever the adjective may be a good person. That will take you so far. I also have a story similar to Renee's when I got laid off last year, and I had done a broadcast for CBS on high school prospects, and we had a rain delay. And as we were talking about earlier, see, we're all going full circle here. We were talking about earlier, I had prepped knowing that there was probably going to be a rain delay. The game was in Florida in September. And so, yeah, I prepped. I knew. I knew, and my producer said, hey, we want you. We're not going to cut to tape. We are not going to give CBS this airtime. We are going to talk through the rain delay. We had an 1.5-hour rain delay that I talked through. And a woman from CBS saw it and wrote an email to our producer and our team. I wasn't on the email. Someone forwarded it to me. And she was so impressed by my rain delay. And I cried reading it because, one, we rarely get praise like that. We rarely know when we've done something that somebody likes. We usually just get told when we mess up. So to get that positive praise, I reached out to her. She was the woman who connected me with Major League Rugby, and I'm hosting their draft in 2 weeks. So literally, it's full circle. I swear, guys, like if I hadn't prepped, if I hadn't thought, if I hadn't done that, if I hadn't responded and reached out to this woman who didn't email me, she emailed somebody else. It's all those steps that you take. That is a long road. And I emailed her this morning, and I said, I just want you to know how far we've come since last year. And this is the result of that. And that's you're eating your cake right there. I'm very much eating my cake in that situation. But I earned it. And as far as the networking goes, and in looking for jobs, my trick is I like to find the job, find who produces the show, who's the in the old school way. Be creative about it and send them a couple lines and then see what they say. They might not respond. That's fine. A lot of people don't respond, and that's okay. But someone will respond, and someone will offer you a job covering a sport that you have, again, never covered. But they know that you know how to do your job. That's what matters. Know how to do your job and be in a position to take advantage of that and realize that crazy situation, an 1.5-hour rain delay turned into this thing. So for me, it is definitely, as this woman said, staying in touch with people who have been there for you and keeping in touch. How are you? How's your family? How's your dog? Just wanted to say, hey, there's a woman, again, when I lost my job, I had reached out to her 6 years ago on LinkedIn. She was working at Yahoo Sports at the time. I asked her if they had any openings. She said no. Literally like a month after I was laid off, she circled back to me and started talking to me about a potential job that she had with her new venture. Because we had a great meaningful conversation station, she came back to me and saw that I was doing more things. Like, that is literally how this works. So I don't have an agent either, by the way, no agent. I'm advocating for myself. So it's your duty to yourself. Take a risk on yourself, be an advocate for yourself. And if you're not willing to raise your hand for yourself, then I don't know why anyone else should be. You've got to be the first one to do that and root for yourself.
And I think just to Danny's point again, sorry,
Renee.
You know, like being kind, being a nice, good person at work, like it's honestly the bare minimum. And it just goes so far. Like Dave and I, like, you know, when we work at the union games, like we know everybody who works at the stadium, and we make it, our work is a little unorthodox. Like we don't have coworkers, but at that game, those are your coworkers, you know? And I can't tell you how many times, like, I've heard like, oh, this reporter got fired, and then all the cameramen who I happen to be friendly with are talking about how this person wasn't nice and they hated working with him or her, and they didn't like their work ethic. And you know, like they're at a completely different game, a completely different sport, and they're telling me, someone who doesn't know anything about it, about this person. So it all, like Danny said, like everybody knows each other. It seems like a very big business. It is not. Everybody is connected. Like I know Renee and I have mutual friends, like, you know, like everybody is connected. So, and it's not to say like to be a phony, nice, fake person. It's just to just be a genuinely good person. I think that's, you know, go through life like that, but also remember at work, it can be competitive and it can be cutthroat. For the women on this call, other women in this industry aren't your enemy. I think we should all kind of realize that there's more than enough opportunities for us to go around. Please don't think you have to bring another woman down to pull yourself up, because that continues to pigeonhole us as just a woman in sports rather than a sports broadcaster. I think that's an important lesson to learn. I've had a lot of great female mentors, a lot of great male mentors. Just for the women on the call though, I think it's important to understand too, because I think too, people like to pit people against each other. Oh, did you see her outfit? Or, oh, she's much prettier than you. And it's like, I don't care. I want to get a job. So I think if you kind of keep it in that perspective too, you know, it's all kind of what goes around comes around when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, and not to say this in a creepy way, but you never know who's watching you. You know, like I have had so many people, recruiters, producers, directors, like big name people in major networks that have said to me like, oh, hey, Renee, I saw that you did this. And I'm like, whoa, like you're watching, you're actually keeping tabs. Or I've had conversations with people because I go to a lot of networking events and conferences. And I actually I'm a part of an organization called NABJ, National Association for Black Journalists. And we have an annual convention. And I go, you know, it's once a year. You don't get to keep up with everybody. You try your best, but it's hard. And honestly, from one year to the next, I had a conversation with someone and I was just like, hey, you know, how have things been going? You know, how's your kids? Because again, like Danny said, always make sure you're connecting on a personal level as well. So I try to remember something about everyone that at the bare minimum I can talk to them about, whether it's a new motorcycle or their kids or a dog, whatever. And so we're talking and she was like, yeah, you know, I actually saw your work that you did with this, and this. That was a great job. And she was like referring back to things I had done months ago. And I was like, wow, like you're actually keeping in touch. And then not to mention through that, as these people are watching you, they're watching you grow. So I heard from someone, and this is advice that I always tell people, you're going to get a lot of no's. Okay. That's just a given. But some of these no's you might get, there might be a network or a team or a league that's watching you, and they're watching how you're growing along with everyone else, not just you, but let's say the three of us, they're watching how the three of us are growing to see, okay, who's continuously progressing, who's continuing to elevate their broadcasting abilities and skill set and working on their craft. And they're watching you because they know come 3-4 years down the line, your name might be the person that they're calling. And I heard that from a Fox Sports recruiter that's I'm not working with Shannon and Skip Bayless or anything like that by any stretch of the imagination, but he's working on that level. And he was like, I'll be honest with you, there are people watching you right now that probably will hire you in a few years. So you have to keep in mind, like the no's you're getting now, at those no's, like that's their loss. Someone is watching you, you're going to get that yes. And all it takes is that one yes to change your entire career path to now allow you to make huge steps. So don't be so focused on the no's, as Danny said. I use it as like motivation. Like, okay, that's your loss. We're going to show you why you missed out, and then continue to progress in your career, because someone is watching, someone is enjoying your work, and you will get that yes at some point.
I always
It's
like
not
to
a
say,
no, it's a not yet.
Yeah, I like to say 100 no's and then one yes comes around. I agree. I faced a lot of rejection in my career. Sorry if my internet keeps going out. I know I'm seeing messages that my internet's unstable, so I apologize again. We lost power at my home. It's crazy. Anyway, a lot of rejection that all of us have faced, but I think a couple of the themes that everybody on the call needs to think about, and those watching the replay, is that you got to, keep the faith, keep the self-belief in yourself, keep the confidence sky high. I think burnout is very prevalent in this business, but if you can keep believing in yourself and the work, and if you can make contacts to maybe go after gigs that you're not even thinking about right now getting, I think that's very important when you're not on the air right now. If you can create some shows, or if it's a podcast, or just to talk to somebody on the internet like this to keep yourself relevant, I think that's very important for those of you that want to be sideline reporters. I think all three of the women on here would tell you it's not very hard to go out. Sorry if the internet's cutting out, but it's not very hard to go outside and go shoot yourself on the iPhone and go shoot a stand-up. For some of the, do a mock broadcast. I think that can be really helpful in the future. I'm going to stop myself right there, ladies, because I know a few of you might have to go soon. So I want to get to the Q&A, and we'll get
really quick
go for it.
Before you get to that real quick.
Yes.
So when you get a job, let's say I got a job as an intern for minor league baseball. I had to be the mascot. I had to wipe bird poop off the handrails. I had to take trash out. I was a media intern. I was interviewing players. Maybe you look at a job and don't see where it ends. Maybe you just see where it starts. And every job I've had, I've tried to the next level, do more and make it into my job to be the digital intern. Well, hey, can I do a quick interview with a player before the game? Trying to take the job you get, take the no, and eventually turn it into what you want, or get something out of it maybe that you didn't see at first because you were just looking at it at face value.
And don't be afraid to take a job that maybe doesn't sound 100% ideal. When I was starting out, I was covered $25 and I had to drive an hour and a half to get there. So didn't even cover gas. And you know what? I did it. That got me into being able to do high school football. That allowed me to get into some college football. So if you really want to get your foot in the door, see it as that. See that opportunity as just that. And then, those people who are working alongside of you, if they're producers, if they're cameramen, they might move up to bigger and better things too, but they're going to remember you. And like we said too, if you create those good relationships, they might say, hey, I know she lives in the area. She might be available. She's doing this. But just because a job doesn't sound like amazing, I can't speak for Danny and Renee, but I would assume so. They've probably all done pay your it does give you a lot of reps, but make sure because it can honestly pay off. So many relationships I made started as I was an intern, or I worked for $50 for a game, and they built into something else.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's get to the Q&A, and let's start with Michael O'Brien. Michael, mute yourself and say hello to Marisa, Renee, and Danny. And tell us where you're
well, first off, thanks, Dave, for hosting this, and thanks to Danny, Marisa, and Renee for all the great information.
You're welcome.
Knowledge here. Right now with the COVID-19 crisis and quarantine, and so many sports entities either furloughing employees or kind of firing them all together, and just the kind of nation and almost being on fire right now. Have you guys gotten any feedback or reaction, kind of the general sentiment to reaching out
Okay.
and networking.
One of the best things that has come out of all this mess, as you talk about the world literally feels like it's on fire, flipped upside down, is the fact that I have had more conversations with people on keeping in touch. I don't even, for most people, it's not even a networking thing anymore. We're friends, we're colleagues. It's just reaching out and checking in. But I've had I've been on Zoom calls. I've been on House Party, the app with people. I have had I'm a part of a lot of different groups and threads on social media. We've gotten together. I have taken my networking to a whole new level. So I would say now, honestly, is the best time because everyone is in pulse. Although people are working from home, I'm not going to act like my schedule's any less hectic. In fact, it's more hectic because I have no idea why, but it is. But you're a captive audience in a sense. So I've had a lot of students that have reached out and young broadcasters and professionals reach out to me. And on the reverse, I've been reaching out to a lot of people. You can reach also Danny was mentioning, people love to talk about themselves. It's the way we are as humans, how we're wired. So ask them for advice. Ask them, hey, can you jump on a call with me? I'd love to hear about your career path. I'd love to hear about what you do on a regular. But please also keep in mind, because of all these changes, we have no idea how sports are going to return. A lot of jobs that are, people are getting furloughed, networks are shutting down. We don't know what it's going to look like when we're out of this. So that's what Dave was mentioning when staying relevant, you want to make sure you're doing even more now to diversify yourself to get to know people, to connect with people, because there's going to be jobs hiring and there's going to be some new jobs out there that we, may not even have had before all this. So start connecting. I would definitely recommend, I try to reach out to a few people each day, not even each week, each day, because not everyone's going to get back right away. Not everyone's going to be able to talk right away. But at least now I know, okay, I've connected with this person, and then tomorrow I'm going to connect with 3 or 4 other people. And just genuinely reaching out on a human level. How are things going? A lot of people are teachers now. Ask them about teaching their kids at home. There's so much that you can talk about without even talking about your job, just to build that relationship.
Thanks, guys.
And my internet's unstable too, Dave, so I guess you passed it over to this side of the computer.
So, thanks, Mike, for the question. Here's Stephen Egger. Hi, Stephen.
One more time, Dave.
Oh, no, hey, hey, Dave, I didn't hear you say my name as well. I just saw that you.
So go ahead.
All right, my turn. Hey, guys.
Yeah.
Introduce you. See you as well. Working with you at MLB, you were all, and really happy to see you on here. Renee, I work at Princeton, so a lot of times either from a distance or in the control room, so I haven't been around you personally to introduce myself, but when I do see you hopefully soon, I'll introduce myself to you. But I'm a fan. You do a great job. I admire your work. It's great to see you guys. So my question is, as it relates to what you guys do, I think one of the hardest things in the entire world, not a good public speaker really, but channeling those nerves when you're live or when you're in front of the camera. How have you guys grown in this career path as it relates to being able to honing that skill? Obviously, you've gotten a lot of reps, but what are the best ways you've been able to overcome any of those nerves?
I think it's easier to talk to people. Not that to me that's a little more nerve-wracking. Nobody's watching, and I've been on bigger broadcasts, national broadcasts, and I still just tell myself nobody's watching, and it kind of just makes me kind of take a step back and realizing I'm just talking to that lens, or I'm talking to this person, right next to me, and that's all that matters. And Steven, I think too, what really helps is that prep. And when you prep really well, you feel so confident because you know what you're talking about. And as easily as it is to talk to your friends or your family members when you know what you want to say, it's going to be that way as long as you feel good about, the prep work you've done up until that point. And it is scary. I mean, right before a big broadcast, when they're counting 3 and then it goes silent at 2 and 1, and you're just like, oh my God, gave me a microphone. Like that shock, but you kind of almost have to ride it out. It's a little bit of like an adrenaline. Always fall back.
Yeah, I always try to take a deep breath before I start talking, just because I honestly still get nervous all the time about everything. Like I can feel it. Like it's natural. But I think as bright lights shining on you, cameras pointing at you. Even for me, so it's a little different than being in front of a camera as a sideline reporter because you can directly see people. So I know if that joke that I say is going to go over well or not immediately. Like, immediate reaction. So for me, when I'm like one of my friends, my mom, dad, one of my siblings, like what would I be telling them? How would I be telling them this story or asking this question? And then if you're interviewing someone, that's where it's so important to have those relationships. So you've had several conversations with that coach, with that player. You're talking with them, you're not talking at them. So it's having done all the work to build rapport and relationships, to do the prep work. I've been camera, I'm like mentally frozen in a sense, but I'm like, I've studied and read and watched so much, I can just go. Or someone asks you a question that you weren't expecting, or the reps shooting, you've worked on for me the work all week. I know come game time, I don't have to think about it, I can just do it. And I try to translate that directly into my work as a reporter. So the more you're just doing versus thinking, the easier it actually becomes because you're not realizing what you're saying. You're holding a mic, you're able to just be comfortable on camera, and it directly translates into how people see your comfort level. They can see if you're nervous. They can hear the quiver in your voice if you're like uneasy. So it is reps and then, having comfortably be on air. And those moments of, when people reach out to you, I've had a number of people, I'm sure you guys have as well, that come up to you after and like, I love that story, or thank you so much for that interview, or whatever it may be. Those are the moments that keep me focused because it's like, okay, there's someone that's watching this. There's an athlete, there's a kid, there's whoever, someone's watching this, a parent, a relative watching this that needs this information. I need to deliver it the best way I possibly can. And if I drop the ball, I'll just get the next one. But preparing, being confident, being comfortable, and remembering why you are in front of the camera in the first place, which is to connect with your audience.
Thank you, Stephen, for the question. Let's go to Jill.
Thank you.
Hey, Jill.
Hey, how's it going? I'm going to put my video on makeup, so please excuse it.
Go for it, Jill. Great to have you with us.
I just, first of all, thank you. So I'm a play-by-play broadcaster for a minor league baseball team in California, and I want to slowly kind of go into sideline reporting. I have a little bit of experience from college. I do interviews, but it's not live or anything. So what advice sideline reporting?
I'll tackle this. I don't personally have experience going from the booth down to the field, but I will say that your skills definitely that fact of time to talk and fill, and there's just a lot of times where you can ramble to an extent, and you have a lot of information to share. So I think the transition would be finding a way to be more concise and pick the couple of things that you want to present to the audience, instead of knowing that you have to say everything under the sun. As the table has turned, you get the opportunity to see things that you didn't see in the booth. So when you are, I know is always something that's going to be happening. You know that you're asking your sideline reporter for that, and this time you're going to go to first base coach, somebody maybe you already have a relationship with, to get that information. You're going to be telling people what is the mood in the dugout, what can you see happening, are people throwing gum at each other, did someone go put their arm around a teammate after he struck out, and did you have a quick conversation with him, did somebody steal home? And for me, it's really just finding the story within the story. You as I think play-by-play, and I can't really speak to it, you're doing like more broad, but in Sideline, I think we get down to the nitty-gritty of those broader storylines.
Yeah, I've actually worked play-by-play and color commentary. In fact, Joe, I know you're in here. We worked alongside each other doing an ESPN game covering softball. And so, or lacrosse, excuse me. So the biggest thing for me is, like, I know in the booth, I'm a huge people watcher. Like, I'm in the booth and I'm now, instead of running all over because I can't, I'm just constantly like looking all over. I'm taking notes about things that are going on. I'm trying to make sure that you now get a different perspective. So you're watching it from, if you're fortunate, a higher view, where you can see the entire field, you can see the audience, you can see the dugout or the bench and the people involved. Whereas now if you're down on the sidelines, you have a different perspective because you're up close. So use some of those same skills. Honestly, a lot of what I do in the booth translates into what I do sideline reporting. It's just different how you're receiving the message. You're now on the other end of the in terms of the content that you're putting out. But if you're able to do play-by-play, which is so difficult for anyone that's ever done it, to constantly having to just describe what's going on to a viewer, a listener, now as a sideline reporter, it's okay, let me take and condense some of those same things I saw and now put it into a question or two, or put it into a hit that very honestly only benefit you, translating from the booth to the sideline reporting, because play-by-play is hard. So use it as a benefit to you to help strengthen your abilities as working live on air as a sideline reporter or an anchor in any capacity.
Jill, just to piggyback, I've done some play-by-play too, and I mean, hats off to you, because that is so hard. Talk about prep. I've seen Dave prep for play-by-play, and it is no joke. So you already have kind of the hard part done. Like we've all said, have confidence in the fact that you know this game inside and out. And half the battle as a sideline reporter is trying to show that sometimes. But because, one, you've established your name as a play-by-play, and two, you know what you're talking about, when you step on the sidelines or in the dugout, like, you have that confidence to know that these things translate, and just being able to give bite-sized nuggets, and also put yourself back into your old role as a play-by-play announcer. What did you want to hear from a sideline reporter? What were you craving that you couldn't personally give to the audience? I think that's a good way to think of it too. And in terms of actually getting the jobs and getting experience, talk to other minor league teams, find other leagues that maybe don't completely coincide with your schedule. Say, hey, I want to get some reps, or talk to your own team. See if there's opportunities within your own broadcast. Hey, I'd love to just get some opportunities in the dugout. I'm looking to transition. You've developed these relationships. People are going to do you a favor, because odds are you're good at your job and they like working with you. So don't be afraid to ask. I'm really looking to try to do this. I'm really looking to try to do that. I've been able to do that on my own time too. So that's how you can also get, even if it's just for your reel and it looks like you did some dugout reporting, that way you can add that without getting that real opportunity. Put it on your reel. No one needs to know it was staged. You still did it. You still did the work. And now you have something to really show future employers of, like, oh, she can actually, be in the dugout for a game.
That's actually a really good point. One more quick point is just make sure you guys let your intentions known. Like, don't be afraid to tell people you're working alongside your goals, what you're trying to do in the conversations that you're having, to let them know, hey, I love doing play-by-play. I'm hoping to also get into sideline reporting. Let that be known, because people are willing to help you. And I know I have shadowed so many people just ask them, hey, I'd love to see how you run, in fact, Dave, that's how we met. I'd love to see how you produce your pregame show. I'd love to see how you do this. Is it okay if I just come watch and just be a fly on the wall, just literally absorbing and taking it all in? And you're not asking them to change anything. All they're doing is now allowing you to sit in and watch. And then now, as you're building that rapport, like Marisa's saying, like, I know some of how I got started was just, is it okay if I practice in front of the teleprompter? Is it okay if can I borrow your script and try to read through it? Just ask people. The word is say no. So you ask someone.
So keep up with the play-by-play too. That's an amazing skill to have, especially as a woman. There's not a ton of, I don't know specifically in baseball, but I just know in soccer, in basketball, there's not a ton of women play-by-play. And people are always, I'm trying to get better at it myself, because people are always asking me, can you do play-by-play? And like, yeah, I can, but like, I want to get my skills better. So you already have that down, that's awesome. So, continue to hone that as well, because there's going to be a lot of opportunities just for that as well. But pursue the sideline too, if that's something you really are passionate about.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Jill, for the question. Always great to see you in here. Let's go to Danny Cookler. Hello, Danny.
Hey guys, first of all, if I just want to do a little anecdote, I celebrated 2 years of hospitalization free from my mental illness. Since it was illness broadcaster, and you guys have some radio experience, and radio is my dream, and it's hard putting out that demo reel, and I cringe at the sound of my own voice and putting it together. Any advice on putting together a radio demo reel?
I cringe at the sound of my own voice too.
I think we all do. You're not alone, Dan.
Yeah, honestly, that's nothing unique to you. I cringe. I honestly find myself in radio. I think the things is paint a picture people to describe something all with your words. So when you're putting together a reel, find those moments where you were so compelling in how you were describing a scenario play out, or even in your question. Have versatility. So one part is you, it's just you doing a monologue about something. Maybe another part of your reel is you interviewing someone. You have the ability to paint a picture that they can feel like they're there. So find those moments that were very captivating and you were able to deliver whatever your question, your stand-up, your intro, your whatever it may be, in a way that sells you in a good light. So versatility is huge, and then don't worry about being, ashamed of the sound of your voice. Again, we're all with you there.
No one likes the sound of their own voice.
No.
I have two quick things to add. Hi, Danny. I like your name. One is that I haven't put anything together, I will admit, from what I've been doing on radio, but I have for some of the podcasts that I've been